Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another session of CybHER Conversations. I'm Kanti. I'm the director for the CybHER Institute. Today, I have with me Naol Bullo, who is a CybHER leader, and I have our very special guest with us today, Aarti Gadhia. She is the principal solution specialist at Microsoft, and she's also the founder of an organization called Sharing Her Empowerment. Aarti, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. You have the floor.
Awesome. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me. Really excited to be here and share my journey. I like to start off with my standard greeting, which is Jambo, Namaste, Konnichiwa, Bonjour, and greetings to all of you who are hearing this today. And if you speak another language, say hello in another language loudly when you're listening. So as Kanti said, my name is Aarti, and my network knows me as a changemaker. And my purpose is to be a voice, as I've dedicated my entire career to breaking down barriers for underrepresented groups in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and maths. And also break down some of these boundaries and barriers in leadership. And why I do this is because there aren't enough women in cybersecurity. There's only 24%. As Kanti and I were chatting earlier on, there's only 24%. And there's a lot of opportunities in cybersecurity. I was honored for my contribution in the cybersecurity space or industry by being named as the top 20 women in Canada. And this inspired me to share my journey in the book, which is here, The Rise of the Cyber Women, Volume 2. So there's 16 of us globally where we've shared our journey in cybersecurity. And one secret I can tell you is that there are a lot of jobs here in this industry. The reason is because there's a big talent shortage. And we'll talk more about it to get you excited about this industry and why you should join, or what are the other areas in this industry. So that's a little bit about me. As Kanti said in the introduction, I currently work at Microsoft as the principal security specialist. What this basically means is that I get to work with many organizations and help them secure their environments with the tools that Microsoft offers. I'm on the good side. So the good side is what we're doing is we're fighting against the attackers so we can have a safe cyber world. Most of you may have heard about hackers, or the term hackers, right? In the news, or companies have had an attack. Well, one thing I want to clarify for everyone is there are two types of hackers: the good hackers and there's the bad hackers. So the good hackers are the ethical hackers. And if you like problem solving, or if you're like me, just curious, there's so many things you can do as a good hacker, or even in cybersecurity in this field. Currently, I'm excited to share that I'm working on a documentary called the Women in Security documentary, and it features many women from different roles within cybersecurity, as well as security in general. Yes, we have some hackers who will join us as well, who will be interviewed. So it's really exciting to share their stories in this documentary, and it's highlighting the moments of women and what they've done within this industry. And then lastly, outside of work, I enjoy cooking. As the summer's out, I also enjoy riding my motorcycle. So sometimes, people will see me with my helmet in social media. That's me riding my motorcycle. And since I'm originally from Kenya, as I said, I like cooking. I enjoy cooking a fusion, which is a mix of Indian and Kenyan cuisine. So if you like spice, that's what it is all about. So that's a little bit about me.
That is so awesome. I like cooking too. I like spicy food. I'm South Indian, and I have a very, I have that need for having like spicy food. So I get that.
Yes, exactly.
So Can you tell us about your journey from being a sales assistant to becoming the principal solution specialist at Microsoft?
Yes, absolutely. It was actually an interesting journey of how I went and what I wanted to do when I was growing up. Because as I was young, and I remember there was someone who was my neighbor and they were working in the stock market, and I saw them, wearing a suit and a briefcase, and they would drive really nice cars. So that was what got me excited. I'm like, I want to go earn that lots and lots of money so I could get that really nice car and wear these fancy shoes and suits and have a briefcase. That's what I saw. And that's what got me thinking about working in the stock market. But the other thing as well is I really enjoyed maths and economics. And that's what also got me thinking, well, I'm good at this. So maybe this is what might be my journey. So I was, for a very long time when I was growing up, I think since the age of 6 years old, when I saw that neighbor, all the way until when I was in university, that was what I thought I was going to do. I was going to go and work in the stock market. And, in Kenya, and I don't know if this is the same in back then, but this was very much in third world countries. The way you chose your what you were going to study was not chosen by you. So when I was at the age of 13, 14, then you have to choose what you want to specialize in. And we had three categories. There was the sciences, there was business, and there was arts. And back then, what they did, the schooling system chose it for you. So you didn't have the choice that, okay, you know what, if you want to do sciences and you want to become a doctor, you're going to go study that. It was chosen by us based on our grading level. So it was based on if you had A grades, you would go to science. If you had B grades, you would go to business. And then if you had C grades, you would go into arts. And for me, it was just like, why did they do that? Like, why is a grading system something that decides your future? If someone's passionate about it, about sciences, why can't they do what they want, right? And I remember speaking to my parents as I was really determined to follow my dream and I wanted to experience university life abroad. And I'll get to how I was a sales assistant and how I came over to Microsoft. But I remember negotiating this with my parents. I really wanted to follow my dream and I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to learn to be independent. I was the last born, the only daughter. So everything was done for me, literally everything, every decision and all that was done for me. I never had to make my own decisions. I was like, no, I need to learn this by myself, right? I want to be thrown in the deep end. I didn't know how deep it was, but until I went from Kenya to UK. But we made a deal with my parents. I said, I want to go abroad. And they came back and they said, okay, on one condition, you get the grades. And of course, what do you think I did? I studied hard because I really my target was to go abroad. I studied hard and I got amazing grades. And so I won my parents kept their deal and I got an opportunity to go to university. Now, before I went to university, to highlight where I was as a sales assistant, when I was schooling, just growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur and he ran a small business selling Japanese car spare parts. And at a very young age, every Saturday, I would go watch him. He would take me with him to work and I would sit and I would watch him. I would also join him. He was on the sales floor dealing with customers and he was selling all these car spare parts. And it was fun. It was fun talking to customers. I saw how he helped them. And I also saw how he had repeated customers because I was going every Saturday. And so I became, as I was growing up, I was the sales assistant at my dad's a workplace because I started watching him, what he did. I was actually contributing quite a lot during my Saturdays. And even during my school holidays, I would go work there for a couple of days in a week. And the other part as well, while there was school going on, I also would, this is something I did with my mom, and I'll bring this back up of what I learned through this that helped me in my career, was every Friday, right after school, my mom used to go shopping to the market. Now, this is an open market. It was called Sokoni. And we would have this sisal basket. And it's an open market. It's so dirty, so messy. And that's why I hated going there every Friday with my mom. But my task was to carry the bag while my mom went, and she would then haggle and negotiate with all the people when she was buying fruits and vegetables, negotiate the price. And I would just sit and watch her. Now, at that time, I didn't really know that I was learning negotiation by watching her as she was doing this live. I didn't even know that sales was a career, put it that way. I had no idea there was sales. I had no idea there was even cybersecurity that would be a future career. And while I was doing that, I became good at it. I became good at listening. I became good at communication because I was watching my parents do this every day. And that's what we were doing, right? Listen is so important. We've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. We have to use it in that way. And that's a big trick in sales. So you always have to listen. It's not about who's going to talk the most, because that's what people think sales is about. You have to have the gift of the gab. That's not right. It's about listening to your customer and seeing how you can help them solve the problem. And so that's kind of when, from a sales assistant with my dad through practice, learning, watching him, hearing my mom with negotiation and listening, I went to university. And while I was at university, I started taking other positions of leadership. I started joining different committees. There was the Skills Society, there was a volunteer-led society. I was doing all these different things because I was enjoying it. And there was so much that I was learning out of that. I was learning leadership skills. And as I did that, I was building my network. I was connecting with so many people, getting people to know who I was. And even before I graduated, I secured a job. And it's, if you think about it, like back then, when you are not a citizen in the UK, it's impossible, almost impossible to get a job. So I had a Kenyan passport, and they were 100 people that applied for that position, and there were only 2 spots for that position. And I applied. And what really helped me stand out is all the activities I did at school, taking leadership positions, participating, meeting new people and trying to, network with them and keeping in touch with them at that time, our means of communication was via email. So that's basically what I was doing. And when it came to getting a job, it was so much easier for me, or not for me, it was easier for the organization to justify why they didn't choose someone from the UK based on the skills I had built in university. So it made it easier to put that application. And that's how I started working at, it was called the Work Foundation, which is an educational charity that helps bridge the gap between students in school. And that's why I keep talking about these transferable skills and the workplace, because a lot of times you may think I'm going to school, it's all about the grades, but it's not just only about the grades. It's all these other experiences and skills you're going to learn that are going to help you stand out. And that's going to help you, apply what you've learned in the workplace and help you be more successful, because that's really important. And so I worked at the Work Foundation, which our division was sold off, and it was called the Careers Research and Advisory Center. So that's where I ended up working. But my role, like I said before, I didn't know sales was a career. And so my role at that time was to go and sell membership packages to graduate recruiters to tell them, hey, sponsor this initiative because we've got this whole network of students who are developing. And that's what they wanted. That's basically, they wanted our network of students, because these are the students who are investing in themselves and they were interested, and they would, pay for a membership. And that's how we were funded. And from there, in 2004, I was deciding, my husband and I, we were deciding, what do we do? And we decided to move to Canada. And we pretty much looked at the map and we looked at, where should we go in Canada? Because my husband had applied and he got his citizenship in Canada. So we pretty much looked at the map and we said, let's go as far on the other side, west, because I don't think I'm ready for extreme snow. I don't know. For me, it was just like, I'm used to UK, which is moderate winters. Kenya was on the equator. It was nice and hot. So it was a big shock for me when I went from Kenya to UK, because I was like, oh my gosh, it snows. It was the first time I ever touched snow, was when I was in the UK in university. And so in 2004, when we looked at the map, we pretty much put a pin and we said, let's do Vancouver. And we settled down in Vancouver. And at that time, now I was new in Vancouver. I didn't know anybody at all. There was nobody that I knew. There was a few people in the community we got to know by attending some community events, but I didn't have a network. Just like, in UK, like how I said, I built my network. People knew who I was, but I didn't. I had to start all the way from ground zero because I knew nobody. And I thought that, hey, I've got this good resume. That should work. I've got a degree. I've got this great work experience, but I learned that doesn't work. That didn't work here. It's about who you know. And that was what I was lacking, because I didn't know anybody. And so again, this is where connecting with somebody, learning to connect with somebody and finding something that you mutually connect with. So there was a recruiter, she was actually from the UK, and she saw my resume. She immediately connected with me. She spoke to me. It was meant to be a 20-minute chat, and we ended up going for an hour and a half chatting, which that recruiter from an agency, she's like, I've got this opportunity for you. And I said, you know what? It's been a few months being new in this country. It's been hard to find a job. I don't know anybody. I will take anything, just anything. And she said, there's a cybersecurity job. You might have to take a step back. It is a sales role, but you might have to take a step back in terms of what you're currently doing. I said, I don't care. Just get me a job, because guess what? Bills are going up and expenses are going up. So I need that job. And so she got me introduced to that organization. It's an organization which is called Sophos, and they did antivirus. It was a small startup, and I started off as a lead generator. So somebody who sits and makes phone calls, 100 calls a day. And what I did was, as soon as someone's interested in the product, I would set it up a follow-up meeting with a sales rep. And that was basically what my task was to do. My job was in that first year. And soon, slowly, I grew within the organization. I moved into a customer role, account management role. And then from there, I moved into a sales role. I worked in different sectors. I got to travel to so many different places based on the region I was covering. I was once covering Chicago, so I got to go see Chicago. There was once I was covering my territory that I was calling into clients that were based in California. I got to travel there. And so I did quite a lot at that organization as a sales role. So 8 years later, I decided, you know what? It's time for a change. I need to challenge myself. I didn't feel challenged. So I moved to another cybersecurity company called Trend Micro. And Trend Micro was a lot larger than Sophos. And the opportunity there was something local, like my territory was local. So which meant that I didn't have to travel as much, but it's, I get to know people here locally within BC, because I didn't still know that many people. I was still covering the US while I was in Canada, and I was traveling all across in the US, but I still didn't know people here locally. So I thought that was a good opportunity to know people here and also learn a little bit more about, a bit more in depth. At that time, it was about virtualization and their agentless security. So I thought this is something new. I get to learn, I get to broaden my network, and I get to challenge myself to see, can I do this? Can I do as well as I was at Sophos? And when I did that, I did extremely well, and closed some major accounts, worked with amazing, very smart people. And from there was actually another organization that reached out to me. Because again, I've never actually applied ever since I moved to Canada, the first time when I was trying to apply and nobody was responding to me. But because I took the time to build my network and build my brand, until today, I've never applied for a job. So that's kind of what it's so important to build your network and to build your connections because of the time, especially if we think about today, what's going on with all the layoffs. There's a lot of layoffs going on. It is sometimes really difficult applying because there's so many other people who are also applying. So it's one big tip I like to share is build your brand, build your network, because you know what? It's just a phone call with a few people and or people will be reaching out to you. So I got a call from this other organization. It was called Carbon Black, and they gave me a great opportunity, great offer, and this is where it was broadening my experience in terms of Western Canada. They're like, hey, we're gonna it's a startup. There's never been there's never been a salesperson in this position, so this is a new role that we're creating. It's a smaller organization. I said, yeah, I'm up for the challenge. So I went back into the startup world because I liked the part where at that time it's like you get to wear different hats. You get to, one day you're sales, one day you're marketing, one day you're doing partnership and things like that. So that's what I was really gaining experience in, various different roles within cybersecurity. And from there, after 4 years, at that time, there was again one of the leaders had moved from Carbon Black to another organization called BugCrowd. And he said, hey, come join me. And I was excited because I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to work at another startup and do what I did at Carbon Black. And this time he said, we're going to give you the whole of Canada. And because there was never a salesperson in Canada, so you're going to build this region up. And so that's what I did, is I ended up gaining that experience. With BugCrowd, it was getting to meet and work with ethical hackers. Like I was saying earlier on, there are two types of hackers. So it's leveraging the crowd to who are then going and working with organizations to keep them safe. So they're trying to find vulnerabilities in organizations and notify them so that they can fix it before the bad people come and attack. And after BugCrowd, there was again another executive who reached out to me and he said, hey, there's this other startup called Times. I think they were like less than 50 people at that time. And we were having conversations and he's like, come join us. We want you, what you did, we want you to do it in the US. So I went back into the US, but I'm still based in Canada. But they wanted me to build up Silicon, like the Silicon Valley, like this product, and create a brand within Silicon Valley. And that's how I got my experience there, because I was, now this is during COVID, so there was no travel. So everything was done virtually. So it was a whole new experience to connect with individuals. And I learned a lot as well, because in my early days of my career, that's what I was doing. It was making those phone calls. So this tip that I learned from back then helped me be successful in this role. And then lastly, the same thing. I was approached by Microsoft and they had this position. This position actually where I'm working was actually based in Calgary. So they were looking for somebody that's based in Calgary. and it's focused around the energy sector. So my clients are those in the energy sector. So Calgary is a little bit similar to Texas. There's a lot of oil and gas, and those are my clients that that right now I'm working with. And they told me about the opportunity as a specialist. And I said, yeah, let me try that out. And I've never worked for a large company. I've always gone for startups. So Microsoft being such a large company, it was a pleasure to have gone through the process in terms of the conversation. It wasn't an interview. It was just a conversation because they were really interested in hiring me. So it was a two-way conversation about what could I, when I come here, what could I contribute and how can they help me progress in my career? It was a two-way conversation. And so here I am. So that was my journey, going from Kenya to Wales to the UK and here finally in Vancouver.
That is quite the journey. And what you said about, having to adapt during COVID, I think that hits home with a lot of working people and even students, right? Because for a couple of years there, we weren't able to do what we normally would have in our roles, in our jobs at home or at school. Everything was online. So we had to do a lot of adjusting to that. So that was a little challenging, but again, that led to a lot of newer solutions, right? Zoom. I don't know if most people knew of Zoom before the pandemic, but now everybody knows Zoom.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
was quite the journey.
All my aunts, right, during COVID, we were having Zoom sessions. I think even one of my grand aunts, she knew how to answer or connect onto Zoom because she would have her group of women that would join. It was amazing that exactly to your point, that COVID helped transform, and it wasn't off everybody, right? It didn't matter where you are, what background you had, whether you knew technology or not. Everyone was into it, right? And everyone learned from it.
Exactly. And my mom's a teacher, so she teaches high school social sciences and not very tech savvy at that point. But, this, it kind of forced people to adapt, kind of forced people to adjust and learn a new technology, to adjust to the changing environment and adapt. So,
Yes, definitely.
yeah. So you founded an organization called She, which stands for Sharing Her Empowerment. Can you talk or can you tell us a little bit about the She?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier on about my purpose, which is to be a voice, and as we talked about how there's only 24% of women in cybersecurity, and with my journey, which I didn't share in detail, one of the challenges I was faced with was every time I wanted a promotion or something like that, it would go to somebody else, and I would be like, "Why? What's going on?" Right? And at that time, I was like, "Is it me? What am I doing wrong? What are my peers who are being promoted? What are they doing that I am not doing?" And so there was this statistic which I feel was wrong because I was doing a lot of whenever there were projects, I would always put my hand up. Yes, I'm interested. There was a time when at a conference, I wanted to present at that conference, but I was never chosen to present at the conference. I tried so many different angles, and so what happened was I was like, okay, is it just me or what is it? And as I was talking to other women, they were faced with the same challenges. Is there was the barrier to, whether it's to progress, because there weren't many of us. And there was something that inspired me to start up She, and I'll tell you that little story, is that I really wanted to speak at this conference, and I had found a mentor who was a VP. This is when I was at Carbon Black. And it was actually through me not being promoted to one of the positions, and I said to him, "Okay, well, you know what? If you're not promoting me, then can you be my mentor? And so he said, yes, absolutely. I'm like, I want to know, what is it that I'm not doing that's being that barrier. And I was working with him, and so I leveraged my mentor and I said, hey, I really want to speak at our sales kickoff, which the whole company, at that time we were about 1,000 and almost 1,000 employees actually. And I was like, all the speakers there, like there weren't any women or female speakers. And I'm like, I noticed that. And I was like, we've got to change that. And if I'm not there on stage, people won't see that. And I was comfortable speaking, but people, wouldn't give me that chance. And so I asked him to help me out. And what he did was he's like, okay, he introduced me to somebody, one of the organizers. And he said, why don't you, they're going to be speaking on this topic. Maybe go work with them and see if you can co-present. I did that. That speaker said, no, I think I've already got my plan sorted. So I don't know how I'm going to add you. Then I went back to my mentor. He introduced me to somebody else. They said they'd already chosen their panelists, so they can't add me as another panelist. And then a third person, same thing, was rejection after rejection. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not able to do anything over here, right? What can I do? And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to create my own opportunity at this conference. So over lunch, there was nothing that was happening other than people eating. And so I went to HR and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do a lunch for all the women at this organization and, just talk about, different topics. She loved the idea. She's like, okay. And so we called it Women Who Inspire. And we had a panel. I was on that panel. But she had to convince the steering committee because the agenda and everything was already done. So she went and spoke to the steering committee for the committee that organizes this conference. And their response was, so this time it wasn't me asking. I leveraged HR to ask. And they had a conversation. They said, well, we can't add this on the agenda because everything's already set in stone. But what we can do is do a grassroots style event. So, maybe so what they said was, we'll give you a room of 40 people. And during lunchtime, you can do your session over at lunchtime. We can't add it to the agenda. And I was like, great, that's fine. I will take it. Now we had more than 40 women within that organization. We had, I think, 75 or 80, we had 100 women, I think. I can't remember the exact number, but we definitely had more than 40 women. So this was on Boxing Day, which is December 26th. I sent out an email to the organization saying we're doing this to the women in the organization, saying that we're doing this during this conference. It's on a first come, first serve basis. Here's a spreadsheet. Please put your name down. And as they put their name down, we noticed that the spreadsheet was lighting up like a Christmas tree. And at that time, I also shared the spreadsheet to the steering committee executives, so they could see what's going on. And there were lots of emails coming back. I want to be, can you increase the capacity? Can you, like so many emails that were coming through. And so I said, now this is the power of the collective voice, because so many people were talking about this and they all wanted it. And so I took these emails and I said, here you go. What do you want me to tell them, to the executives? And they immediately increased the room capacity. They brought in food for us, and they realized the importance of this. And that's what I realized, the power of a collective voice. And that's what inspired me to create SHE. And the idea behind SHE is an employee resource group. At that time, employee resource groups didn't exist. So an employee resource group is a group within an organization that has a mission. And again, it depends on what the purpose is. So in this case, our mission is to be that voice to make change within the organization, so we can make sure that there's diversity within the organization, that there's inclusion, that there's retention, that there's growth, there's promotion. We're tracking to see which departments are not doing are lacking, and which departments are doing well. So these are all the different things. And the way forward with setting up She was one of the executives. She had advised me, this is another executive, and I went to her and I said, how do I create this group? And so she gave me this idea of how to create it. And so behind the scenes, she was helping me create this successful employee resource group, which is sharing her empowerment. And we made tremendous changes in the various different organizations I've worked at that have created this. There have been a huge change. I've seen new programs implemented. I've seen, an internship program that was created. There's so many amazing things. It's about even calling out, hey, there's not enough women on your board, that the organization said, we've got to change that. You're right, because you're calling that out. Until then, nobody called it out. So that's a little bit about She, is the power of a collective voice within the organization to drive change. And we're basically planting that seed, and together with many voices, change happens fast.
What a powerful story. I mean, most people, when you come up with new ideas, new initiatives, new thoughts, or anything that you want to implement, I feel like this is a common theme with management when they say no. It's like, think about when you were little and you went to the store with your mom or dad, I want to get this, or, I want this chocolate, I want that chocolate. No, like literally shut it down. No thought before or after. So what you just said, the power of the collective, it's really very true.
I totally agree. And, in life, a lesson that I learned, you're always, like, in many ways, you're gonna get a no, right? Like you said, as a child, in the workplace, you're gonna get a no. And the one tip and advice I would give, like in my situation, I was hitting a roadblock. So a couple of things, as you heard, what I did was go find a mentor, right? Find somebody who, a mentor's not somebody who's going to, tell you what to do. What they're going to do is help you see what you don't see in yourself. So they're going to help you with, depending on what you want out of your mentor. So find a mentor, find a sponsor. So a sponsor is somebody who's talking about you when you're not in the room. And that's very important, because that's going to help you in your career. So if there are people who are talking about you and when you're not in the room, that is very important. And then the other part as well is when there's that dead end, and where find a way to create your own opportunity. Because I knew, there were 3 no's here, including when I had a mentor who was helping me out, and there was still a no. I decided, you know what, get creative, because that's so important, is get creative and find a way that you can create your own opportunity.
That actually ties in. I had a question for you on, what advice you have. So what you just said kind of ties in, find a mentor, find someone who can help you figure out where your strengths lie, or where you're, putting those limitations on yourself, and somebody who can, lift you up. That champion, that sponsor is very important. When I was younger, I did not realize the importance of having somebody in my corner. Right now, I have 2 wonderful women in my corner who are, ever supportive of what I want to do. They're very, what's the word I'm looking for? They give me such wonderful advice, here's where you can do this. Or if I'm doing something well, they always take the time to say, job well done. So it's very important to have somebody in your corner.
Yes. And this is another thing as well, is, that I'm really driving, that She drives, is creating that cultural shift, right? Exactly to your point. Some companies, and it's so important when you're looking for jobs, is it the right culture for you, right? What kind of a culture do they have? And there've been many other jobs that have come my way that I've rejected, that have been more money as well, but I've actually rejected because it's not the right culture fit. But back to She, and the story around She is, if you do end up going into an organization, because there is no organization that has that perfect culture, everyone is striving to work better, right? Everyone's working on goals and initiatives and things like that because everyone wants to do better. They want to be more diverse, they want to be more inclusive. But think about starting up a She, because having that collective voice is going to influence. And one of the other powerful things that she did was transform that energy from, a lot of the women who were disappointed and it was creating a negative vibe, to hold on, we've got a purpose here and we're making change and we're making an impact within that organization.
That is so perfect. Unfortunately, we went over time and we don't want to take up any more of your time. So I'm gonna stop the recording here. And once again, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wonderful journey with us.
Thank you. Shukriya. Asante sana. Hope you enjoyed it.